relationships and how people are managing relationships. These are times when people are spending more time with each other, people possibly with more time with people who they don't want to spend time with. You know, we have a really complex society and makeup of homes. You know, there are people who have they've had craving of, you know, spending more time with people in their family. There's some people who have been sadly abused within their family homes. So imagine, you know, what it could be like for them. It's sad, and it's, you know, you think to yourself, you know, what's going to happen and how will they reach out for help? Do they even know who to ask for help? So, you know, at the same time, we also have people who are business owners and they're trying to run a business. And whilst they're trying to run a business, they're trying to make sure they have the right relationships or maintain the relationships they have with the customers or the clients or the suppliers. You run a business, I run a different type of a business. Yeah, but the thing is, these times now are very challenging, aren't they? You know, they've added something into the mix, which
definitely,
you know, I don't think anybody would have even guessed or could have. Look, I'm all about risk management, and we think about contingency planning and stuff like that. But this is one of those situations which I don't think many people.
For, can you?
Yeah, you really can't. You really can't. From a government level, though, you know, I think there are certain. I was watching an interview the other day of one of the American presidents, and I can't remember who it was. I think it was Barack Obama, who actually mentioned something to do with some kind of pandemics or viruses, and I think he mentioned Ebola at the time.
Yes.
And he said maybe we should be thinking about how we would.
2015, wasn't it? 2014.
Was that in that WhatsApp group that we're in?
Yes.
Somebody posted
2014. Yes.
So, you know, we have at that level people already thinking about stuff like this, but from a personal level, nobody thinks about it, do they? What are you doing as? Okay, let me ask you the question. Your personal relationships, how do you manage them? Or are you managing them any differently now? And from a business perspective, anyone's watching, whether you're a business owner or not, doesn't matter. I want to know, I think we all want to know, if you feel you're managing relationships successfully, what are your secrets? What are the keys to managing good kind of relationships? Yeah, let us know. Tell us in the comment section.
See, it's all, I mean, the whole topic today is communication. This has put a spanner in the works of how we communicate. We probably, and correct me if I'm wrong, guys, but the people that we even live with, a lot of our communication with them will tend not to be face to face. Does that sound strange?
Oh, you mean like the use of groups, chats?
Yeah.
WhatsApp?
This is how it works. I mean, predominantly for the most of the day, you're not sat in the same room.
And if you are, you're not actually there.
That as well. But kids go to school, come back in the evening.
Oh, you mean on a normal day?
On a normal day.
Yeah.
We go to work, come back. Usually around the dinner table, we'll have an hour or so. Or most families will have an hour or so.
Yeah.
A couple of hours. This has just changed all of that. These are people that, even though we live with, we would see for 1, 2, maybe 3 hours a day. That's changed. Because now, not that you'd want to, but there's no getting away from them.
Yeah.
You know? And
some people may not want to. Some people may want to.
But this is it. The way that we're communicating with people, even the people that we live with, has changed. Let alone the people that we associate with through work or sports or hobbies or, you know, other aspects of our life. So I guess the question is, how are you now communicating with the lads you play football with, you know, or your colleagues from work, other hobbies that you may have? It's really changed everything, and it's interesting to see how people are taking to it. I don't think we could have planned for anything like this.
Okay, now we're in this.
We're in this.
And we're in this together, whether we like it or not.
Yeah.
How do we manage it? How do we make sure that these relationships are being maintained? Or how do we make sure, or how do you, the viewers at home, make sure you're managing your relationships, either with your whether it's your parents, whether you're social distancing,
Yeah, definitely.
you might not be living with them.
Yeah.
Whether it's relatives in other parts of the country or other parts of your street, town, whatever. Your clients, if you have clients, how do you manage a relationship with them? How do you even maintain? Do you even think about maintaining a relationship? Well, here's the thing. Retail businesses will probably think, okay, if it's non-essential, we've been asked to close down, or we're going to close down, and that's it. We'll wait until we're back up and running.
Yeah.
But, I think they're missing a trick. I really think they're missing the trick because...
In what sense?
Well, here's the thing. There's one. They say data is very valuable, right? There's a reason why a lot of retail businesses like to give out vouchers or newsletters in order to collect data. Being careful of GDPR, right? You got people who order from you online. You can, with their consent, collect email addresses, telephone numbers, or whatever. Now, if retail businesses aren't open during that time, then they can still maintain contact with them by sending out email shots, for example. Market research, building a relationship. Let's just say it's a retail business selling desserts, yeah? And you had to, thank God you're still open to, a certain number of hours, reduced hours now. But if you weren't, what would I do? I would think about having the data that I already have, making use of that with consent, again, maintaining or being mindful of GDPR. I'd be in touch with them on a regular basis, maybe not too regular, once every couple of weeks, saying, what would you think about this recipe? What's your favorite, mash?
Yeah, basically saying I'm still here. We're still here.
Exactly. Keeping them or keeping yourself relevant and
Walaikum salam.
in people's minds.
Brother Asim is listening in. Great topic of conversation. Muhammad Afzal. Thank you guys for your comments. We want to hear from you guys. Tell us,
how are you managing your relationships? Whether it's at home or whether it's your business relationships, your clients. Think about, I've just noticed one of my connections, Nav, is on, just joined. Nav does, she's a makeup artist from what I understand. Now, at this time, obviously, there are a lot of ladies who wouldn't have visited or had any treatment done. I know there's a lot of memes and jokes going on about that. Let's not get into that for now. Actually, post your best meme in the comments.
Yeah.
But if you've got a client base, how do you maintain and stay relevant to them?
Yes.
Because from communities, look, we've got to be mindful of, or at least conscious of, different communities and what's important to them. Think about the fact that the Muslim community is now going to enter the month of Ramadan in the next 10 days, 9 or 10 or 11 days, or whatever, inshallah. After Eid, that's when the real celebration starts. Now, if we're still in a lockdown, what's likely to be happening? And if we're not in a lockdown, what can you do now to ensure your clients think you're the ones that are still going to be the saviors or you're relevant?
Yeah, I guess so. So if you don't hear from someone for long enough, in your mind, they almost don't exist, or they cease to exist.
What's that saying? Absence makes the heart grow fonder, but the mind... There's something that you wrote on the post the other day, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Or the mind forgets,
yeah,
or something like that.
It's both things, isn't it? So you're right. For businesses coming out of this lockdown after a month or 2 months, it is going to be difficult if they've maintained zero communication and zero contact with their potential clients. So you're right. But just as importantly, you guys will have family, that you'd visit on the weekend or once a week, once a month, a couple of times a week, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Now that you're not able to, how are you keeping in touch with them? What's our communication means? How do we maintain those kind of ties, isn't it?
I think most people will generally have some kind of groups that they're all in, just to maintain.
It seems to be where it's all at, isn't it?
Yeah, like WhatsApp groups. We've got family WhatsApp group. I'm sure you've got a family WhatsApp group.
Yeah.
Everyone has some kind of a WhatsApp group. If it's international even, you're still in the same WhatsApp group. There used to be emo or IMO, however you pronounce it.
I never got to picture that one.
No, I never either. Okay. I never either. There were other ones like Line. If you're in the Middle East, Line is a very popular one. I used to work in the Middle East. That's the only reason I know. Otherwise, I'd never heard of it before. But I think WhatsApp is quite universal now, because at certain points, even in the Middle East, you weren't allowed to use WhatsApp.
Weren't allowed to?
No, WhatsApp was not available. It was banned.
That's interesting.
Yeah. I remember when I was working in Saudi for a couple of years, there were some phones you just couldn't have WhatsApp on. It's really odd, really bizarre. But I think there was something to do with the security element of it.
Okay.
Yeah, but yeah, that's that.
So how does that
Well,
affect
my nephew
us?
called. My nephew called me the other day from London just to see how I was. Now, usually it's just a phone call, a normal phone call.
Yeah.
How you doing? You're right.
Yeah.
But because of the social distancing thing, I just kind of felt compelled to put him on video. Do you know what I mean?
Okay.
We don't usually have a video conversation.
But
I
usually
felt
you'd not see each other for periods of time.
several months at a time.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's mindset, isn't it? It's different when you can see someone but you don't.
Yeah.
And it's different when you couldn't visit them even if you wanted to.
Yeah.
Okay.
But now that we know that we can't, when you know that you can't, is the volume on by something? Is your phone volume up or something? I can hear volume from
that's
somewhere.
the
Yeah,
microphone.
if you know you can't, you feel more compelled to now, because it's just or at least it is the case with me. I feel like when you crave visual connection with someone,
Yeah.
whether it's my siblings, my nephews, or whatever, I felt that it's better to just at least have a video call. It's better than nothing, isn't it? Even though normally it wouldn't really be an issue. But what about people? What about people who need an escape but can't? I'm going to invite Ash into the conversation. Ash is a family law solicitor, and she deals with family law stuff and things like
Cases of domestic abuse.
Domestic abuse, that's the
Domestic
word I was
violence
looking for,
abuse,
yes.
It's very unfortunate. It's very, I wouldn't say taboo, but it's not really discussed in the ways that it perhaps should be, especially not amongst our communities, but it's definitely something that needs addressing. So
We've got a comment from Mahbub. Mahbub says, WhatsApp is being used a lot to keep in touch with family at the moment. Video calling helps too, sort of a substitute to meeting in real time. Yeah, that's what I think as well. Video called my ummi. Nice one. Was so good to see her. Miss being at home and seeing her whenever I want. Praying this all ends really soon, inshallah.
Sure,
Inshallah, Mahbub, inshallah. And that's the thing, isn't it? People at least call each other. You know what's really sad? Some of our viewers will know we had a very close member of our community, a very significant member of our community, Uncle Nazir Awan, who passed away last week. It's his burial today. He's just been buried. May Allah bless him. And his son basically had to break the news to his mother, right? His own mother, so Uncle's wife.
Okay.
Unfortunately, he couldn't even hold her to comfort her. He had to do it outside the house from the window. Can you imagine that?
Wow.
Can you imagine the kind of heart you would have to have and the strength you would have to have? My father passed away. I was 14 at the time. I remember I had to break that news to my mother. There's no, it's a completely different dynamic.
Yeah.
And it's never easy.
No, I mean, communicating is so much more than just your voice or your words, isn't it?
Of course.
Well,
this is the thing that we talk about in NLP, neuro-linguistic programming. It's communication is more than just your words. It's, your demeanor, the way you express yourself, the way you dress, even the way you can look, your expressions, the way you say things, the way you say words, emphasis on certain words and not others. Communication it's a big spectrum of things. But when it comes to something like this, you want to be there physically to at least comfort your own mother, to tell her, look, Dad's died. Imagine how difficult that could have been, and not being able to hold her to say that. Anyway, it's
the reality.
It's the reality right now.
Yeah,
it's the reality right now. I'm gonna call Ash in to find out from her what these latest stats are about domestic violence and how people are managing. Maybe I think she has got tips. She was telling me the other day that she's got good tips. Assalamu alaikum, Ash.
Hi.
Can you hear me?
Hi. Oh, I can hear you loud and clear.
Okay, brilliant.
Evening. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. You are live on the Beardos episode number 4. It's all it's all to do with relationships. And I remember talking to you yesterday, inviting you onto this, and asking you from your perspective. In fact, before you tell us that, introduce yourself and tell us who you are, what you do, and then we'll take it from there.
Well, thanks for inviting me to come onto your show, to your podcast, and to share my thoughts on domestic abuse in coronavirus during the lockdown. But my name is Ash, and I am a family lawyer. So I specialise in divorce and separation, cohabitation, children law, family finances, prenup and postnuptial agreements, and I am based in Birmingham. I work for a small firm in Solihull, and I'm 14 years qualified. I'm a very experienced family lawyer. So, just listening to what you guys were saying earlier about COVID-19 and the impact on families as well. So I think we all have had to change. Everyone's had to change their lives and adjust. And also, I think more and more people now, like I've forgotten, Majid, what's your colleague's name? Sorry.
Ali. Sorry.
Ali.
I forget myself sometimes.
Yeah, I forget him as well. Don't worry about him. He's not. Yeah.
Apologies, but Ali mentioned about communication. So I think definitely communication is key to keeping in touch with families and friends, and especially now as well in relation to what I do as well, and the impact where we have separated families as well. You have co-parenting. Communication is key to co-parenting, but just going back, I think
Ash, just a quick question on co-parenting. When you've got families which have separated, like parents have separated, there's this there's thinking that if you're separated, whichever parent you're with, you got to stay with that, or one parent using that as an excuse for the other parent not to see the kids. Is that legitimate? Is that right? Is that the case?
Well, the stay-at-home rules, which were issued by the guidance given by the government, it makes it clear that that you're no longer a person, individual, or a child is allowed to go outside of their home other than for essential shopping, for work, for a 1 hour's exercise, for medical need.
Yeah.
But in that guidance, it says that where parents do not live in the same households, children under 18 can be moved between the parents' homes.
Okay.
So it's not to say that they must be moved between homes.
But they have the option.
But they have, yeah. So,
Ash, just a quick question. What's the situation with, like, you're involved with family law. We're talking about relationships and how to maintain good relationships. We'll come to that in a second, and we'll take your tips in a second. But what are the recent stats on this? Has there been an increase in things like domestic violence? Let me just give a shout out to Justice Williams, who's tuned in. Justice, she's a superstar, she is. My heart goes out to all those women and also children living in an abusive household at this time. Absolutely. School was a safe place for many children, and they don't have this right now. I hope welfare checks are being done on these families. Thank you, Justice. I totally agree with you. So, just like Justice is saying, there's abuse taking place with children, but there's also abuse taking place between partners. What are the stats on that? Do you have any stats? Do you know if there's an increase?
Yeah, so I shared an article last week on the rise of domestic abuse during lockdown, and there's been quite a lot of media and news coverage as well. So I think the domestic abuse helpline, they reported a 25% increase in calls and 150% increase in traffic to its website.
Wow.
Since the lockdown. And I think my understanding is that there's been about 12 deaths in lockdown related to domestic violence.
Wow.
So, yes, I think definitely, during the coronavirus emergency, I think the level and severity of domestic abuse is definitely expected to rise, because more and more people are being forced into concentrated periods of isolation, and
You know,
living
The Guardian reported
yeah,
that there's a charity called Refuge, which
yeah,
has had a 700% increase in calls to their helpline in a single
yeah,
day.
Wow.
yeah. It's definitely the case, because I think for most couples, being able to, like, how before COVID, the crisis and the lockdown restrictions, I think for many couples or victims of who were in a domestic abusive relationship, like going to work or going on the school run, visiting family and friends, was probably some sort of an escape, like
It
an
was. It's
escapism
like
from,
Justice Williams
yeah,
had just said, yeah, it was an escape for them,
yeah.
yeah. But they don't have
So
that now. So what are your quick tips then for people to try and maintain, good relations within the
say,
house?
well, for domestic, so for anyone who's suffering, or you know is a victim of domestic abuse, there I shared some tips for how they can protect themselves during isolation, and some of those tips I shared were ensuring that their mobile phone was always charged and with them at all times. So if anything did happen, they could call someone. Also to maintain contact with their family and
Yeah,
friends and neighbours and work colleagues
yeah,
through technology. So we're now seeing a complete, remote contact is so important, especially, like video, as you were talking about earlier, WhatsApp call, video, Skype, Zoom, as well, and even in terms of talking with children in contact as well. If one
yeah,
parent's exercising their parental responsibility and
yeah.
using COVID as a weapon to restrict their access, restrict access for the other parent, then why not, grant the other parent remote contact
Sure,
so that contact continues.
sure.
But just going back to your question about the domestic violence and the tips, I mean, if anyone, there's the emergency, the National Domestic Abuse Helpline, which
Yeah.
is run by Refuge. There's a number for that, and there's their website as well.
There's a website. I don't know if anybody wants the number. It's 08. In fact, if anybody does need heart goes out to you.
Yeah.
Stay strong. But if you need the number, 0808 2000 247. And you know what? There's also a number for men.
There
People
is a
often
number
forget
for
and
men.
overlook.
It's a men's advice line
Yeah.
on 0808801999. But another good tip is as well, if your partner does become violent, try and avoid rooms in the property where there may be weapons, like the kitchen or the garage. And also make sure as well that you've got easy access to your car keys or your purse and your handbag, so there's somewhere where you can just grab it and go.
Yeah.
But there is there's dial 999 if you feel that you're in immediate danger.
Sure.
Or you can also contact your local neighborhood policing team if it's not an emergency. But there's definitely, the website.
The point is, help is still available, irrespective of the
Correct.
lockdown. Help is still
Yeah.
available. Thanks so much for that, Ash. Ash, just when you get off the line, just put a comment in the comment section with your details. If anybody wants to get in touch with you, they can, get in touch with you. And thank you very much for joining us this evening. Thanks, Ash.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Bye. That was Ash Asmir Hussain, family law solicitor. Now, this is an interesting thing.
Wow, I'm shocked.
You shocked?
Like I'm sitting here, but if I wasn't sitting, I'd take a seat. Just to hear of, and the tips are great. It makes sense when you think about it logically, but to have to advise someone to
what to do to save their lives.
Stay in a room of their own home.
Yeah.
Stay in rooms which don't contain weapons.
There was somebody
Keep
mentioned.
your phone by you.
Yeah.
Or keep your car keys by you in case you need to
escape
from home.
Your own home, yeah. Guys, there was also, from my understanding, there's a clever app. Somebody told me about it. Nazneen told me about it from the last conversation, that there's a really clever app where what you can do is, it looks like a normal app, like you're checking the weather, but in the background it's recording stuff. for your own, to document stuff and keep a diary of things what are happening.
Okay.
So you can possibly record audio or whatever. If anybody knows what that is, if you can just share it with us, that would be really good. You've had a couple of more comments come in. Thank you, Makki Masjid, for your comment. Stanislava is saying, my dad had to comfort me via Skype when delivering the news that my granny passed away shortly after I gave birth. They hid the news for me for over a month to protect me and the baby. Was lucky to have my baby next to me for all the tears that followed for days. It's so hard to have to deal with it on your own. Stay strong all and talk anyone out there. Good advice. I'm sorry to hear about that also, Stanislava, but you also have some wonderful people around you to help. Somia says there are a lot of men and women who don't have access to the outside world, especially in the violent situations. How do they reach out for help? For example, no access to your phone, landline, or even internet. That's a good point, because especially spouses, who have come from abroad, their access to the outside world has been limited. Some of them, I'm not saying all of them. There are cases. Don't know how many now, but there are cases where spouses and their access to the outside world has been very limited. I've come across such situations myself, where the partners here have been very restrictive in their communication with the outside world. How do they get in touch? My only suggestion is, look, if it's a situation that means life and death, get the hell out of there.
Yes.
Scream if you have to. Go and knock on neighbours' doors. And
are we saying that? Are we saying that these situations are occurring because of the lockdown and because of the stress or frustration of being restricted or home so much, or are the majority of these cases people who would be victims of domestic abuse anyway, but just now, for example, their partner's not going to work or going out with their friends or whatever, so it's a more difficult time? Or is it because are these new cases? That would be good to know.
Well, there's the call rate to the, what's that organization called, Refuge.
Okay.
The charity called Refuge has been 700% increase in calls to their helpline in a single day.
Wow.
Because of the coronavirus lockdown.
That's
700%.
phenomenal.
Yeah, that's no joke. That's no joke.
The level of stress, alcohol, and drugs. We yet to see the worst to come. Stanislava. I have the experience of needing to save mine and my children's lives. Also needing to have an escape routes. The information that the lawyer has shared is so important to know. Unbelievable.
It's amazing that we have so many people who have yes, Raja, these situations have existed for years, but they've been heightened, they've been amplified, they've increased because of the lockdown. The problem now you have is where people who had been abused will have had respite in going to work or school, or if there's a partner who's doing the abusing and they've gone to work now, they would get a break. Now they're in front of them 24/7. That's the difference. That's the difference, Roger. And this is the issue. But ultimately, help is there, and it needs to be accessed, and people need to know that it's still accessible. But how do you kind of even talk to someone if you're not at that edge of breaking free from there, but you're close to it? You don't want to, because in the mindset of a person who's being abused, a lot of people who are being abused are made to feel it's their fault. They've made
or that
them,
it's normal.
Yeah, and if they're not at that stage where they're ready to move out or break free from that relationship, but they just want someone to talk to, how do they do that in a small place? Like someone living in a flat, there is no place they can go. It's tough.
I know this because I live in a flat and there's no hiding from the wife and kids. It really is tough at times.
So Justice is also saying also domestic violence needs to be more of a higher priority for the government and more resources provided, as many services are run by charities. Absolutely. Actually, Justice, correct me if I'm wrong, Preeti Patel mentioned something. I don't know. I don't trust her figures since the last time she spoke on TV.
She's brilliant. She's brilliant.
Her figures were like 1,000, 1,000. Which one was it? But yeah, her figures suggested there was something being made available. I don't know. Maybe you will know more about that. But here's the thing, though. Men being abused. Now, somebody was having that discussion with me, I think a couple of days ago. They were saying that men are usually they go out and do the breadwinning, right? A lot of men who do contract work or work as independent contractors, salespeople, builders, handymen, plumbing, or these kind of professions. Yeah. A lot of that is, if they're self-employed, especially if they're not getting the bread and butter in, some men are actually being abused.
Or because they're not bringing home...
Because they're not being,
the bread.
In inverted commas, the men of the house, And that could have a psychological impact on the man. I don't think many people understand how much of an impact it can have on a man when that man himself may see himself in that position of being the breadwinner and failing to win the bread and put it on the table. As men, can you understand? Can you imagine being called a nikamma, useless?
Well, the thing is, this would be a conversation that you'd have with yourself, and that's tough enough.
Just to even comprehend something like that.
Yeah, that's difficult enough to look yourself in the mirror and say, I can't go out today and provide for my family. But then to encounter some form of abuse. Wow, okay.
It's tough. It's tough for men out there as well, and I'm glad there's a helpline for men out there as well, because it's not easy for men either who can see their families in their homes not being. Look, we do, as you know, and you've done some work with it as well. We've got a group of volunteers who provide food packs, and this is for people who are vulnerable or isolated, or the elderly, or people generally who living under the breadline, and that demand has increased over this period. And I know some of our friends who are doing a phenomenal work in delivering these parcels. Whenever I've delivered any parcel as part of the group, it's interesting to have a little bit of a chat with these people, and sometimes they just want to have that chat because they've not spoken to anybody from the outside of the house for a while. And it's interesting just to kind of, see their body language.
Okay.
And their response. Somebody once said, no, you said it once on social media, because you were asked to do something by one of your neighbors, that the hardest thing to do is ask for the help.
Yeah.
The giving part is easy.
Yeah.
The hardest thing is the asking, and it's bang on. And Zahur was saying that to me the other day as well. This is why having lots of criteria or hoops to jump through in order to get a food parcel isn't always a good thing. But we've just got to be careful we do our due diligence as well. Thanks for that, Justice. Appreciate it. So, yeah. Do
you think a lot of this is... I want to move away slightly from the topic of domestic abuse, because that's gonna
it's gonna put a downer on
that. Honestly, that's hard enough to take in, and I genuinely
before we move on, look, if anybody needs to make any contact with any of these organisations, the National Domestic Violence Helpline 0808 2000 247, and the Men's Advice Line is 0808 801 30327. Ash mentioned a different number as well. I'm sure there are other numbers out there. But general communication. Let's talk about the topic back in terms of relationship.
So, have we lost the art of communication? I think we're so set in our ways that when things change, we don't really adapt. We don't know any different. I think this is the case for a lot of us. And I was surprised because I was speaking to...
Let me ask you a question. What is communication?
Communication is vast, isn't it? Everything is communication.
Yeah. But what's the first thing that comes to your mind when we think communication?
I think we generally just connected to talking, don't we?
Yeah. In the contemporary world, it's this social media, phones.
Yes, at the moment, yes.
Because of the lack of physical interaction with people in real life, and a higher amount of a volume of interaction over digital platforms, a lot of people, especially the newer generation, I feel have lost, or maybe haven't quite caught up to how to communicate with people through general conversation.
Yes.
They would rather sit in the same room as you and text you.
I think what we find with
Send emojis.
I love my emojis, so I'm not knocking you guys. I think we all know how to communicate. We just reserve certain channels for certain people.
Okay,
So
interesting.
when it comes to our WhatsApp groups, for example, we there's certain people who we pretty much only communicate with through WhatsApp. We have people, for example, speaking or sitting down having a cup of tea. That's predominantly now restricted to grandparents or, you know, for the youngsters I'm talking about, because we technically
I am a
we're
youngster.
Well, yeah.
What do you mean? What are you trying to say?
But why can't we chop and change? Now, we talk to people every day,
Yeah.
but there's some people that we generally don't talk to. We only Facebook or Snapchat or whatever.
And the same people who see you, who are connected with you on Facebook, if they see you in real life,
Yeah,
they probably won't even give you a handshake.
they're
not
that
now,
person.
but generally,
They're not that person, because on Facebook they're sending you emojis, they're cracking jokes, they've got a bit of humor about them, they've got wit.
Yeah.
But yet now you're face to face.
They got nothing to say. They don't even acknowledge it's you. They pretend that they've not seen your movement.
So
That's amazing, isn't it?
this is it.
Okay, 'cause that's part of communicating, right? But just on a side note, I've been in situations where I failed to recognize people based on their social media profile pictures and stuff.
Yeah,
but
definitely.
that's a different conversation altogether.
Fantastic comment from May Arthur. I was just reading this and I thought,
What's
this
May
is
saying?
brilliant. Guys, it's day 33 for me in isolation. At 80 years and in the top 1% vulnerable, I let my family and friends all know I'm okay. I think I'm really lucky to have a brilliant family unit and great neighbors and friends who all ensure I'm well looked after. I find loads of things to do. Each day I spend 1 hour in my garden painting fence panels at the moment. Okay, brilliant. 2 hours spring cleaning, an hour doing craft work, oil painting, knitting, so never get bored. The one thing I find hard is when my 20-year-old son or daughter, not 20-year-old, when my son or daughter bring me the shopping, I'm sitting 20 feet one end of the house and they are the other. Cannot hug them is hard. Also getting out to do my bit for the homeless, that's very hard. I contact some elderly locals to me so they are not stuck there without a natter. Natter's chit-chat, right?
Yeah.
Sorry.
Oh, no way, you didn't know what that is. Come on. Ali,
So
you're not
as
that
you
young.
can see, I'm not one for sitting still. So watch out when we get our release papers. We're really going to party. Stay safe, both.
May is a legend. May, you
virtual
are.
hug sent. Love the program.
Thank you, May. May is a legend. May
That's
is.
got to be my favorite comment.
Yeah, she's one of our former chair for the voluntary group we have, Humanity Unites.
Okay.
We deliver stuff for the homeless.
Wow.
And the food packs and
That's
stuff.
fantastic, isn't it?
And she's a soldier when she's contributing on site.
I was just
on
going
the
to
Sunday
say,
lunches. She makes everything.
This is a regime. This is military style. This is, you know, I don't want to say boot camp,
Yeah.
but she's her own boot camp.
She's got a routine, hasn't she?
Yeah,
But do you
brilliant.
not think that we're missing the trick there? By the way, Justice has said that's so true. Some people are socially awkward. I've had that many a time when people see me in person. I think she's referring to not recognizing you, pretending not to recognize you. But I think Justice, you're just overpowering them. That's what it is. I think I can't blame them. But yeah.
Wow. Do you know what? I read through this, and it's not just the fact that May is, 80 years old or whatever, but for anyone, to be able to break down their day in such a beautiful way, and it's so productive as well.
Yeah.
She's done the gardening, she's done the cleaning, she's checked on her neighbours, she's done her humanitarian work.
They don't make them like that anymore.
Wow,
do
they really don't.
But is the key routine? I was listening to somebody else the other day, and what they mentioned was when people have, in fact, it's not just anybody. One thing I've noticed is people who are perceived to be successful, and those people, those of them who actually go on to deliver inspirational and motivational talks, they are very much in favor of developing routines. They all talk about it. They all talk about developing a routine. If you've got a routine, you're going to be keeping intact your faculties of your mind, and you're going to develop a system. You're going to continue moving in life. I mean, this is different. These are different times, but even during these times, challenging times, there can be routines that we can put together. And I mean, these are people who I admire. One of them I mentioned earlier on, unfortunately, who's passed away, Uncle Nazir1. In one of his interviews, he mentions having a routine. You know, the guy was 67, and he used to go out in the morning. He used to do a 10-mile cycle ride before he even started the day, every day, 5 days a week.
Wow.
He used to do golf, swimming.
Okay, so question.
Yeah, go on.
And this is for me and everyone else listening also. Imagine your routines flipped on its head completely. I don't know how much the lockdown has changed things for me specifically. Now that I think about it, maybe that's her routine anyway, you know? But for someone, I don't know, someone like myself who would normally go to work and do other activities away from home, my routine's completely out the window. So I'm left trying to find a new routine. Do you see what I mean?
You mentioned last week that your routine is out of the window. You started doing other stuff at different times now, rather than the same time that you used to.
Yes.
But you've still got things that need to be done.
Very much so, yeah.
See, my argument was, for me, having a schedule doesn't mean to say you have it attached to any particular time, a timetable.
Yeah.
For me, having a schedule means a schedule of tasks that need to be completed. They don't have to be at any particular time.
But what about for those who can't complete those tasks?
Then they're not scheduling the right tasks in the right way. They need lessons on how to schedule tasks, on how to complete tasks. There's a method to the madness.
See, another thing I love about May's comment is her art of communication. She's still checking in on her neighbours.
Yeah.
You know, she's still making time for a...
May
Matter?
actually posts she used to post while she was in self-isolation before it went really mental. She actually posted on Facebook on her own Facebook page.
Okay.
This is day number 3. I'm okay, guys. Just to let people
wow.
know I'm all right.
This
It's
is
brilliant.
Becky said, we are made to be sociable creatures. I think that online has made some people have reduced ability to be able to hold a conversation in person. Could you agree any more? What's online doing to us, really?
You know what?
They call it social media, but it's took away our socializing skills.
What does socializing mean?
Apparently, it means sending emojis. You know, how is it that social media tools are affecting our ability to socialize and communicate more than anything?
I think people are still communicating, which is in a different way. Look, you get a knife, you can do wrong with it and you can do good with it. Social media is not a tool. You can do wrong with it and you can do good with it. Wrong to yourself. It can hinder your own development if you rely on that more than certain other tools. Like in business, for example, people, again, going back to the conversation of relationships, there are social media, inverted commas, gurus who convince their clients that they need to only do social media campaigns for business and exposure and marketing.
Really?
Yeah, because that's what they do. Yeah, how well they do it, you know, God knows. But just like with social media, I don't agree that that's the only way. face-to-face has its own merits.
Of course, yeah.
You know, emails have their own merits. Google ads have their own merits, you know, pay-per-clicks. There are different tools, but to say one is the only one.
So, would you say that social media hasn't hindered teenagers' communication skills?
I think they're still communicating. Look, has it hindered their ability to communicate face-to-face with people and express emotions? Questionable. Has it hindered their ability to communicate altogether? I don't think so. If you look at the way social media is being used to communicate, whether it's a message or with each other, they're still communicating. We can't take away from the fact that it's still communication. Whether we prefer that method of communication or mode of communication or not is a different thing altogether. You and I might prefer to have face-to-face conversations, right? The depth of a relationship will often be dependent on the depth of conversations and interactions. Social media for me is one form of interacting and communicating, but the deeper you go, which can include a telephone call rather than just social media, it can include video calls rather than just telephone calls, it can include face-to-face meeting rather than just telephone calls or video calls or social media. And the deeper you go through those levels, the deeper that relationship is likely to be.
Okay.
For me, relationships are forged very much emotionally. And again, professional relationships, it's the same thing. You know, professionally, how many people will part with, you know, thousands or millions of pounds to a supplier just based on a social media interaction? They're going to do their due diligence.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
It's the same thing. In any emotional interaction, I feel that the deeper you are in your level of communicating with someone, the deeper that emotional attachment is going to be. And that's why they say those who are closest to you can hurt you more.
Yeah, man. We're not going to go all poetic on you guys, but that's very true. I'm sure there's a few lines to go with that kind of sentiment, but it's true. My issue is the bare bones of communication going out the window.
Well, here's the question again. What is the bare bones in the contemporary world? Given, imagine, communicating. Imagine you were born 20 years ago. You're just 20.
I was born 20 years ago.
Yeah,
bro.
whatever.
Come on, man.
Plus
Take out the bank holidays, the odd weekend here and there.
Imagine you're just around 20 years old and you are now in an era which you've never known life without internet or social media.
Okay.
You've got to judge people, or at least have conversations about them in light of what they are about or what they may be exposed to. Everyone, again, we go back to NLP here, everyone has their own versions of the world. They understand the world depending on their own unique subjective experiences, education, environment, all that kind of stuff. So for them, they don't know anything different. Even us now, I mean, I'm from an era where I clearly remember life without the internet. I don't know about you because you are a few years younger than me. But I remember life without the internet at all.
Do you remember when TVs used to be black and white as well?
I remember having a black and white TV in the house.
Wow, really?
Yeah. But that's because it was an old TV that we still had.
Okay, so you're old, but you're not that old.
I'm not that old, no.
Okay.
But going back to that, how many people, even our age and above, can still go back to that life? I do a digital detox every year, as you know, for a whole month, month of Ramadan. That's it. No social media, no social interactions like that. This year, I might make an exception, but it depends on a couple of things which need to be made clear about yet. But generally, every year, I have 1 month of digital detox. No social media. I come out of all the WhatsApp groups, and I want to return some kind of equilibrium in my mind.
Yeah, a bit of a factory reset almost.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that helps a lot.
Do you think a lot of these problems with the whole lockdown breakdown thing is because we're not diverse enough in our communication skills? You've got 4 people living in a house, pretty much got their own rooms and whatever. They've got their own schedules. Someone goes to work in the morning, someone plays football in the evening, someone, what was the other hobbies that we discussed? Knitting and craft work and spring cleaning and oil painting. I don't even know where to begin with an oil painting. Is that painting with oil?
Yeah.
Okay.
Becky says, I miss having a pen pal. Imagine how many letters we would have sent years ago to different friends to communicate. We got to share pictures within the letters to make it more personalized. I had a pen pal. I still remember it was a girl called Elizabeth from France.
How does that work? Okay.
Back in the day, they used to pair you up with people from different countries just to communicate with them, help your communication skills. You actually wrote letters and posted it to them.
Brilliant. Okay.
Right? And that's the era that I come from. Yeah. I remember talking on communication, guys. I don't know if any of you will remember this, especially the migrant community. I remember in 1986, I went to Pakistan for the first time. My father and I had sent a telegram to my brother here in the UK to say to him that on this particular date, you need to call this particular number at this particular time, given the time differences. And we will go there to receive your call so we can hear you.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah. And my father and I, from the village back home, we went on a bus, went to Jhelum Centre, where the PCOs were, the public call offices.
Yeah.
And we had to wait for my brother to call, and he'd say, I'm calling for such and such a person. And then we'd pay partially for the call as well from our side to listen to a call. Incoming call. Has anyone else done that? I'd be interested to know if anyone else has experience of doing something like that. I genuinely would. I remember that I had a French pen pal. That was great. Yes, just the same here. I remember that
What happened to all these pen pals?
They grew up just like we did.
Okay.
And probably didn't, bother continuing with having...
Now, was that because you only knew how to communicate with that person through letters, that you thought it would be
that's the
weird
point.
to meet them or sit with them or
That's
talk to them?
That's probably why they call it pen pal.
Yeah.
Pal. You just write into them. I think some people who built a good friendship with that pen pal would probably go on to meet them. Obviously, if in a different country, it would be a bit more challenging than meeting someone down the road or a different city to you. But yeah, essentially that would be it. I mean, with the pen pal that I had, I think there were just a couple of exchanges for the sake of having this project, but then none of us made any effort to continue.
Becky says, I remember having to make a few reverse calls from payphone boxes. I have to confess, remember that too.
What did you have to press? 141?
192 or something?
Yeah, something like
192,
that. And then
you could literally hear the operator
talking to
asking the other person if they wanted to accept your call, the charges.
I remember that.
And I remember being denied a couple of times, and I was like, oh man, why would you make me hear someone else saying, no,
I don't want to talk to him.
But yeah, fantastic. That was a great memory. I don't even know if we have payphones nowadays. They're very rare.
There are still a few
Hi,
payphones.
Majid Ali. Nas has tuned in. Hi, Nas. Hope you're enjoying the show. Faded out when we stopped sending letters. That's justice.
Yeah.
This comes back to my question.
Go on.
We can communicate in numerous ways. Letters, phone calls, WhatsApp, other social media, emojis, sitting and talking over a cup of tea. The thing that I find we're not so good at is changing that. Why is that? Does anybody else find that they've got people that they can text all day, but they couldn't really sit with them and have a conversation or hold a conversation? But then they've got people who, they could maybe sit with without internet and without everything. You could go fishing with your mate and just be sat there for hours.
Fishing?
Well,
how did that come into your mind?
Things.
I
was trying to relate to things that you could, at your age and that.
Not me.
And some people can communicate for hours on end without talking.
Yeah.
They could literally...
Comfortable silences.
Yeah. It's great.
It's a wonderful thing, isn't it?
It's oh my God.
Okay, calm down.
I'm gonna get emotional.
So yeah, okay. I think they probably don't need feel the need to change. If people are wanting to text only, that's good enough for them. If all people are wanting to sit down and have a conversation, they're comfortable with that. That's good for them.
I like that. I'm just as bad. I've got people that I could chill with and sit with, or I don't know.
But there'll be
play
some
cricket
people.
with.
There are some people who you don't want to have more than just a text message conversation with.
I think so. Yeah, I've got people who.
But there must be reasons for that.
I find myself unable to carry a phone call with them, but we could, I don't know, play cricket all day, or work together all day, or whatever it is. Do you ever find some phone calls are just really awkward?
Yeah, but I think that's generally because the person on the other look. I have an extensive sales background, so for me, that kind of thing doesn't faze me.
Okay.
And when you hear these negatives and stuff, we were trained on how to just talk past those kind of things and try and get people to speak.
Yeah.
But generally in life, there are people who don't like to have phone calls. My eldest brother is one of them. He's a classic example. There's some people he probably feels a bit more open to have conversations with, but I can probably count on one hand the number of times I've actually spoken to him on the phone.
On the phone, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
He's just not that kind of a person.
And
that was only like, I'm coming outside to meet you, or we arranged to go somewhere. You come in. I'm in the car now. Do you want to go? That was it. And that's only a handful of number of times. In person, it'd be great. We can have a good conversation.
But there's so many people like that now. There's people who you could be texting them on WhatsApp. They're online, and you think, wait, I can't explain it through a message. Let me ring them, and they'll not answer your call. Yet they'll carry on texting.
That's an interesting one.
So many.
That's an interesting one. I had a similar situation a few days ago. I was trying to sort out something when somebody passed away in the community, and I was calling somebody. They wouldn't answer my calls, because it was important that I get some vital information for them to get the death certificate.
Okay.
And they wouldn't answer my calls, but I was texting them on WhatsApp. They'd respond
At the same time.
Yeah. It's really odd, really weird. Either that or I was blocked and I didn't realize it.
No, there's memes about this sort of thing, and people have it as their statuses, and I never really got it. And I've read many memes where I'll text you all day, but if you call me, I'm not answering it.
Yeah.
It's one of them, isn't it?
And there's a standard WhatsApp status as well, isn't it? WhatsApp only or something. Can't talk or WhatsApp only.
Yes, no WhatsApp calls or no calls.
No, can't talk or WhatsApp only.
Yeah.
That's the one I remember.
Okay.
Having a conversation with someone and liking it are two different things. Yes, Stanislava. Having a conversation with someone and liking it. Liking that conversation is two different things. You're right. Omar says could be on a WhatsApp call. Could be, Omar. Could be. God knows. That's all I'll say on that one.
But make 99 excuses. It's good.
That's the one. But yeah, coming back to the original question, in terms of the topic, relationships, lockdown or broken down. The reality is, some people have got it locked down. Some people have got some really good tips. If you've just joined us recently, if you've got some good tips on how you make sure you ensure that your relationships are locked down, you've got it locked, then share those tips. But unfortunately, for some people, those relationships are broken. This lockdown has broken those relationships, and that's partially through just sheer differences in people's personalities. Look, there's something called some people are big chunk thinkers, and some people are people who think in detail. They could both be reasonably good people, generally speaking, but when they interact with each other, one likes detail more than the other likes the bigger vision. That's it. They don't quite care about detail. They're incompatible by their very nature in their conversations when they're planning things. That doesn't mean to say any of them are bad people. Do you know what I mean? So just because you have two different types of people, different thinkers in a relationship, sometimes then distances are good. They need that break. They need to be away from each other, because that's the things that make them attract, Other things are probably more attractive towards each other. But come to plan something, they both have completely different ways of thinking. One thinks big, need a car, need to get the tickets, and that's it. These are the dates. The other person might be thinking, okay, what am I going to pack? You know, what color are they going to be? What size are they going to be? Is it going to be cold? Is it going to be...
That's what makes it work, though, isn't it?
Is it, though? This is
both thinking the same thing.
It's a general thing, isn't it? Like opposites attract.
Yes.
I don't think that's always the case. I don't think opposites always attract. I think there are certain elements or attributes about individuals which can be found attractive. But there are certain things which can be completely incompatible. Look, theological differences. You can't say opposites attract. People have completely different theological beliefs. They're so opposite because they're so ingrained. The beliefs are part of your belief system, your value system. If your value system clash, you might be attracted in other ways. Could be physical. Could be other things that attract you. But when it comes to compatibility, that's something different. Attraction and compatibility are two different things. We can't conflate the two. Mariam says, sometimes people become intellectually deprived. Yeah? They become intellectually deprived, or they are intellectually deprived. Well, here's the thing. Is it just intellectual in the way that we always understand it? Or is it intelligence? Or is it emotional intelligence? Because often I find people get into fights because they're not
So do you think
very much aware of their reactions.
Do you think there's a whole bunch of... Because I remember we joked about it a couple of weeks ago, that with this whole lockdown, it's going to create a lot of work for divorce lawyers.
Yeah, I put a post up just before the lockdown, about a week before the lockdown, saying that the demand for divorce lawyers is about to shoot through the roof, and also the demand for maternity nurses in Christmas, over Christmas, and both of them aren't going to be isolated incidents, right? Just having a laugh about it. But the reality is, it's true. You're right.
This lockdown then isn't the cause of the breakdown. All it's done is reveal the cracks. Would you say? It's showing people, couples. Yeah. Okay, now you're in a room together.
Yeah.
You're not going off for your 12-hour shift, and you're not going off for your weekend. You're stuck together. To then realize, hang on a second, we're really not that compatible. It only worked because we saw so little of each other, and perhaps the physical element, or the couple of similarities that you shared carried you through that time.
At that time. Wow. But people sometimes mature with each other, or one matures at a faster rate than the other. When you see relationships blossoming, there's a deeper level of understanding there. But not everybody matures at the same rate. So you have to think to yourself, if these cracks are showing now, what will they do when they're retired? And none of them can work. Will they have reached another level of maturity, both of them, where they are more accepting of each other? It's hard to tell. Sometimes external influences play a role in all this kind of thing. We can't limit it to what's happening just now. Some people may be living a very fast-paced life and they miss that. They feel agitated for not being able to do much, and that's frustrating them. Some people may be frustrated because they can't go and win the bread, as we were discussing earlier. Some women like their space, or men like their space, which is being invaded right now.
Well, it's both ways.
But it's temporary. But
if anything, we're doing the invading. The person who stays at home is usually left to it for a good chunk of the day.
Yeah,
that's their space, both their space and their time. Now, because the breadwinner, or the person that's supposed to be leaving the home, can't do their thing, they're now inadvertently invading the other person, making it their problem. Yeah,
it's a very complex situation, Ali. I don't think there's any black or white answer to this. There are lots of shades of grey. More than 50 of them. But yeah, we can't just say this is the problem and this is the solution for that.
So Miriam says there has to be depth in conversation, otherwise people switch off. This is true.
Yeah, but how long can you continue with an in-depth? I agree with Mariam. There has to be a depth of conversation, but how long can you continue a conversation in a lot of depth? It's exhausted, mentally
It's
exhausted.
not how long. I mean, I don't think anybody would say that, keep it super philosophical or super deep all the time. But once you've had that.
Personal preferences, Ali. Mariam, personal preferences is what I would say. I say people, for me personally, I feel more comfortable around people who have depth in their conversation and their vision and insight and understanding of concepts, situations, the world. But at the same time, I like the same people to be quite jovial, juvenile, happy-go-lucky,
but then
and not always
without that depth. It just has to be one conversation every now and again, just to kind of keep you interested, keep you intrigued.
I agree.
Some substance.
Yeah, I agree.
And that's a shame because a lot of people are finding now that
a lot of people don't have
that.
depth
They're not
of
getting
conversation.
that. Perhaps you were getting it from some other part of your day,
or someone else,
and now you're very limited to who you're spending time with, and you're thinking, I was actually only coping because I was getting this, and this.
From outside of the house.
See, that's another thing and that comes back to your point of the need for divorce lawyers and separations, and unfortunately, in some cases, domestic abuse and violence.
Well, this is what Ash was saying to me yesterday. She says, just like over Christmas, after Christmas, there happens to be a surge of demand for divorce lawyers for all the reasons.
Wow.
Over Christmas, people have some cheap
huh?
jollies and they cheat or what. I'm not saying everyone's like that, but there happens to be a higher number of cases where that kind of thing happens, or people spend more time with each other and realize this isn't for me. But yeah,
so too much of a good thing.
Too much of a good. You wrote that in the body of text. Too much of a good thing. Yeah, interesting. I'm interested from people who are watching. How are they doing it? What are their thoughts on? Because we're moving into a conversation relating to relationships rather than just managing relationships. But relationships are such a big topic on its own.
This is true.
Look, for me, let's break it down. Professional relationships and personal relationships. Sometimes some of them overlap. Sometimes. I don't mean mixing business with pleasure.
You don't?
I'm online. What I mean is, some people who are in the business world or business associates become quite good friends with you, and some come to my mind automatically.
Yeah.
So, some might go partying with you, some might go on networking events with you, or whatever.
I've never been to a party I've never been to a party full stop, but this would be pretty cool to have, isn't it?
Yeah, that's all you need. We're in a party now. That's all you need. Play the music once you've switched off.
Party with the Beardos.
But party with the Beardos. But some people have good relationships professionally, which end up becoming good personal relationships as well. Like they become friends with you. So I have some of them in my life. Some personal relationships end up having shared interests with you on a professional level, but although they may not become business relationships. For me, it's important to maintain or at least retain a healthy relationship with everyone. There are lots of things you can do in life generally.
Have you been able to do that during this period?
I would say so.
So is it
I've tried.
fair to say that for most people, they will have forgotten or overlooked to communicate with certain people that they usually would?
Yeah, you know what? This period, here's the other thing. And I'm sure people on Facebook will probably recognize this. There are some people that you've seen on Facebook lately who have shown their true colors. And through frustration, call it frustration, or through having plenty of time or more time than ever before, they have shared posts, comments, thoughts, ideas, which have been complete baloney at times, but some of them have been like really enlightening. I've seen both ends. I've seen some people, because they've got the time, they're sharing more on social media. Some have shared some real golden nuggets and pearls of wisdom. And some of them have really just not done any justice for themselves. Pardon justice, I don't mean you justice. But they've not done justice to the image that they've portrayed of themselves online up till then. So let's just take as an example some of these.
You could compare it to drunk texting, couldn't you?
Yeah, think about the conspiracy theories. Yeah,
Okay.
I'm not saying that I'm in one camp more than, well, actually, it's hard to tell. But there are some people. Who would do things like, the £20 note one that you might have seen. There's a £20, and if you look at the £20 note, there's a building there.
I haven't seen one for a while, man. I can't seem to get past spiders these days.
I'll lend you one after the show. So if I'll show you one, you can just look at it. Then don't touch it. Keep your social distancing.
Retraction.
Actually, what I'll do is I'll send you a picture of it. Okay, you can keep that picture.
What's the theory?
So the theory is that it was predicted, the coronavirus, because there's a little emblem thing on top of the £20 note, and someone says that looks like the virus itself. And there's like there's a picture of a building, and said, look, these are the 5G towers. Yeah, 5G is to blame for everything. Yes, Omar. That's Omar's saying that. So Stanislava says we cope with hobby through 9 years being together. I shall cope for a few months. Yes, you're right. Justice says, especially those now having to claim universal credit who stereotype people on benefits and now look. Wow, yes, Justice. Isn't that true? Have you seen any? Some people used to like really your people on benefits and all that kind of stuff. Now they're having to claim themselves. That's a good one. Omar blames 5G. Naz says, oh my God, the conspiracy theories. I thought these people were intelligent and now I don't know what to think. That's the thing, what I'm saying. Some people, you have a certain perception about them, and you think, articulate, intelligent and stuff. I'm not saying it's unhealthy. I think it's okay to look at alternative views, unorthodox, or what people aren't looking at. I think, the David Icke thing, yeah? Icke, however you pronounce it. I think some of his stuff is very interesting. Not sure I would agree or disagree. But
The thing is theories, isn't it? It's hard to agree or disagree. How do you,
Well,
for example, 5G, and I know Omar says it in jest,
yeah.
but how do you disagree or agree with the fact that certain level frequencies or higher frequencies have an effect on our health?
Okay.
I don't appreciate, well, the thing is, I don't get people who are staunch on one side of the fence.
That's what I'm saying. This is what I'm saying. When you've seen people who have claimed or have positioned themselves as influencers or people of a certain caliber, professional, or even, people, motivational, inspirational, or whatever, educators, people who are mentors and coaches and stuff like that. There seems to be a surge of them as well in the last few years. Those people then to sit on, staunchly on one side of the fence, and do you know what I mean? There's no other, possible explanation, and that's what gets me. I'm thinking, man, as professionals, if you're a consultant or you're a coach or anything like that, surely you will think about potential alternatives. You have to broaden your minds and
You've got to keep it somewhat open.
Thank you very much for everybody joining in. Asmir Hussain, the family law solicitor, thank you very much for joining in from the phone call and offering your pearls of wisdom over the phone, as well as guidance. So thank you for giving us your time. If anybody wants to get in touch with Ash, she's left the details above in the comments section for family law stuff. We'll be back next week. What was the topic that you mentioned last time?
I really wanted to discuss buying habits.
Buying habits. I like that one. We'll go with that one.
Okay, so we're decided.
So we decided. Next week, we're going to talk about buying habits. And when we say buying habits, thank you, Stanislava, you too. When we say buying habits, we're talking about not just the social elements, but also from a commercial perspective as well as your personal perspective, from a personal space and from the commercial perspective, what companies or businesses, what they might be thinking when they're selling something for you to buy. What are they really selling? Are they selling products? Are they selling service? Are they selling experiences? You see, those are the kind of things we're going to be talking about. So for now, I hope you guys enjoyed that. And we will be back next week. Have a good evening. Take care. And see you next week.